So my guest today is Kitty Boitnot. Kitty is a former public school educator in Virginia with 37 years as a teacher in elementary school, library, media specialist. She spent 4 years as president of the Virginia Educational Association. I do bring in good guests, folks. And is now a heart-centered career transition and job search coach to burnt out teachers who want to change careers but don't know where to start. Her firm is Boitnot Coaching, LLC, and she's the founder of Teachers in Transition. Now, I know there's a podcast by that name. I don't know if there's a group. We'll find out as we go along. And she is also an Amazon bestselling author and has a Ph.D. in educational leadership and is a licensed science of mind minister. Kitty, thanks for making time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me, Jeff.
You're very welcome. So one thing I know from the teachers in my family is that they've become really close to the students. And the notion of leaving the students provokes a lot of guilt.
Right.
Now, they look out at those desks, at least there were desks when they were in the classroom. They look at the desks, they have their memories of that student who sat in the third row off to the side. And it's hard to leave. There's feelings of guilt that show up.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them that kind of assuages the guilt and allows them to move on?
I tell them that the guilt will pass, but it's a normal part of the process. I also offer that if they are so unhappy in their teaching career that they are thinking about leaving, I remind them that life is too short to be stuck in a job you no longer love or feel like it's filling you up or giving you the kind of fulfillment that you deserve to have from your job. I also remind them that a happy, fulfilling career leads to a happy, fulfilling life. And I honestly believe that. I believe that when you are unhappy in your career, it bleeds over into every other aspect of your life. Your health, your relationships. I've even had clients tell me that they were going through a divorce because they were always doing schoolwork and their spouses felt neglected. That's not how teachers should be asked or expected to behave, that they spend every waking moment in the classroom. I know those feelings of fondness that we develop for certain students. And I've had students that I followed long after they've gone off to their adult lives. But the guilt, while it's very real and present in the beginning of this process of leaving the classroom, does ease, and in the excitement of starting something new, it begins to fade away relatively quickly, believe it or not.
Fascinating. And I'm curious, do they know where to start?
No.
Because they've been in the classroom for so long, right?
Right. Yeah, no, they have no idea. The people that I work with, at least, out of 100 people that I might ask, if I were to give you a magic wand and you could be, do, or have anything in the world that you wanted, do you know what that would be? Maybe 2 out of the 100 will answer immediately, oh yeah, I know exactly what I would do if I had the money, if I had the time. 98% will hum and haw, oh gosh, that's a great question, but I don't know what I want. And in part it's because they've never taken the time to really think about what they want. You know, we get caught up in our lives and sometimes swept away with life. We make decisions that steer us in different directions. Many times after a number of years, we find that we're off track of where we thought we were going, and suddenly we're aware that we're not going where we thought we wanted to. Sometimes that works out okay, but sometimes it's time for a course correction. So in the beginning of the process that I recommend for my clients, I encourage them to really research, do due diligence about all of the different kinds of things that teachers can translate their skills and experiences to. But I also ask them to do some inner reflection and do a deep dive into what was it that they wanted to do when they were 5 years old? What did they envision their lives would look like when they were in middle school? Because often those are hints of the things that those individuals had trying to nudge them in a particular direction, and they ended up going in a different direction. For example, I have one client who majored in math all the way through college. She ended up teaching by default, but that's not what she should be doing. Every assessment she's ever taken never tells her that she should be a teacher. It tells her she should be an anthropologist or a biologist. And so that math background is showing up, but she's not using it in the way that she is uniquely meant to be using it.
It's really interesting. I think there's so much pressure on students as they get closer to graduation. Doesn't matter whether it's high school or college. Obviously, with teachers, it's college, that it's time to make a decision.
Yeah.
You're 20, 21, 22 years old, and it's time to know what you should be doing for the rest of your life.
And that might have worked back in the days when we only had a life expectancy of 40 or 45. But now we can, often we live well into our 80s and 90s. And if we're lucky and have good health, we can be doing lots of really wonderful things well into our 70s and 80s. So the idea of having to pick the one thing that you want to stick with for the next 50 years is ridiculous on the face of it, but that is sort of the conditioning that we were raised with.
You betcha. And they're being raised with now.
Yeah.
I know my son, when he graduated high school, his friends were going off to college, and they were pushing real hard. You should know what you want to do when you get to college, which is good up to a point, because you shouldn't be wasting all that money if you're not sure. But if you don't know, what do you do?
I got caught up in that myself. Until I was a junior in high school, my career plan was to become a nurse. And I hadn't really thought about what nursing would entail. I just liked, back then, nurses were still wearing the starchy uniforms and the cute little caps. And my mother was a nurse. My two aunts were nurses. So I just assumed that I would be going to nursing school. And then I took chemistry. And I realized I don't want to be doing this all the time and measuring and learning all these formulas. I wasn't good at it. Math was never my forte. And so my freshman year, I was really struggling. I went to a junior college instead of a 4-year college because suddenly I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so for me, teaching was sort of a backup plan. Back in the 70s, women generally had 3 options. You could be a secretary, you could be a nurse, or you could be a teacher.
Well, the fourth one was an MRS degree.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah. And a lot of girls went to school to meet the men that were going to become their husbands. That was back then. Today, we have a totally different landscape. Women have many, many more opportunities that they can pursue, and men as well. I mean, I have a number of men clients as well, but the women are the ones who struggle the most with the guilt of leaving. The men, when they reach the point of no return, they're done. They're ready to move on. Yeah. But the women are the ones that hang on to the guilt.
It's the personality differences. I was going to ask you about gender differences between the male and the female teachers when it comes time to leave. You just hit on a big one. The men have had enough. I'm out of here. Done.
They often, and this is just a generalization, of course, it's not true of everybody, but my experience has been that the men will often decide earlier, and I'm sorry, here comes the lawnmower. The men will decide earlier, like after 6 years instead of after 12 or 15, that it takes the women to make the same decision. So.
Interesting. So where do they start? How do you start them off on this process once they come to you and say, I think I'm done?
Ready to move on. Yeah. So in the beginning of the process that I use, I offer that there are assessments that one can take to help inform their personality preferences, their learning styles, the things that they find of interest. I offer a number of different assessments. Most of them are free. One of them is a higher fee. But they're all intended to help inform what an individual is predispositioned to do. And then I offer some books that I found personally helpful when I was in the middle of my own transition. Books written by career coaches who have spent hundreds of hours with hundreds and hundreds of clients and have case studies to share. And the case studies are intended to spark or inspire ideas that my clients can have about what's possible for them. I encourage them in the beginning of the process to play with possibilities, because by playing with possibilities and not limiting themselves to what they think they might be qualified, quote unquote, to do, they expand the range of options that they might be interested in taking a look at and discover paths that they didn't even know existed because they've been so busy in the classroom teaching all these years.
So I'm going to play act a little bit here, Kitty,
Okay.
and say, but I don't know how to do this. You know, like
That's why
how
you
do I-
need help.
Right. And when you tell them to play at this, does the resistance come up to playing at it? Or
Some people, they're the yeah butters, and often I don't end up working with them. I like to work with people who are open to possibilities. So if I find out, and I can find out pretty quickly through an initial discovery call, the yeah butters are the ones who will offer in response to every suggestion I offer. Yeah, but I've already tried that. Yeah, but I know that won't work. Yeah, but, and so I pick up on, they're really not interested in looking for answers. They're looking for confirmation that there are no other options for them so that they can make themselves satisfied to just stay put. I want to work with the folks who are ready to move, who are action takers, who are eager to explore for themselves the range of possibilities that are out there.
I remember there's a young man I worked with some years ago, and you know, he graduated college and was fumbling around in a dead-end job. Not a teacher, but the process is pretty much the same. Where, you know, our first two calls, you know, the first one's a discovery call. The second one, we start getting to work, and I'm starting to encourage him to do informational conversations with people so that he can start learning what it's really like in a couple of the fields that he's considering. And his response to me was to go, yeah, but notice the yeah, but I know this already. What am I paying you for? Because you haven't done it yet, was my answer.
There you go.
You could have done this without me. I'm going to kick your butt and make sure you do it. And he did, and wound up going back to graduate school and wound up committing to a career that he's really passionate about now. And part of it was taking the time to learn what it was really like.
And that's important. You know, I just talked this morning on my podcast about how we've become so conditioned for instant gratification. You know, we move on if a website loads too slowly. We complain if the service is slow at a restaurant. We get impatient when we're in a long line at Starbucks. We're just conditioned to have things happen quickly, and that isn't what happens in the job search. If you really want to make a lateral move from the classroom to a job that's going to require your education experience, and it will pay you commensurate with what you were being paid as a teacher, you're going to need to plan. You're going to need to understand the process. You're going to need to expect that there will be challenges that you'll have to overcome. There may be some training initially up front that you need to participate in. So going into the job search process with an expectation that in a month you're going to have a new job is setting yourself up for disappointment. And I'm afraid a lot of people get discouraged and quit before they're successful simply because it's taking longer than they think it should. And I tell my clients that it never goes as smoothly as you would like for it to, it never goes as fast as you would like for it to, but that the only way you won't be successful is to give up before you're done.
It's so funny. People whose wives, husbands, or partners have gone through a regular job search. I'm in this square box. I want to do this square box work in another place. They struggle. And people who are transitioning careers, they think it's going to happen instantly. They're going to make the same money or better in the new role.
Yeah.
How often do we see that?
Well, I discourage them from trying to have that expectation. And I'll even say, if you want something really fast, I'm just not your person, because I don't know that process. I do know how the job search process works. I've been helping people since 2013, and I created a course teaching people how to job hunt in 2015. And I know that my process works, but even the course is intended as a 16-week course, because no matter what you're doing now, there's going to be a lapse between what you're doing now and your new job. Even if everything went perfectly, by the time you've gotten yourself through the application process, you've been invited for an interview, you've conducted the interview, they've offered you the job, you've negotiated the conditions of your job, and you have a start date. At the very quickest, that entire process is going to take at least 6 weeks. And that doesn't include the upfront work where you're deciding what it is that you want to do next.
So true. If you were thinking of representative example of someone that you've worked with, and let's not identify them by gender in case they wind up being part of, listening to the interview. So they become they instead of she or he.
Gotcha.
Could you walk us through what someone went through, homogenizing this a little bit? Again, we don't want them to recognize themselves in the process.
Right.
And maybe combine people if that would work better.
I can combine that. In fact, what I'll do is combine some people who were successful not so long ago.
Excellent.
So these folks, and I can refer to them as they because they're similar in what happened with them, but they've been looking for about 6 months. They've had to go through an entire mindset shift and a rebranding process that takes them out of identifying themselves as teachers and moving toward what it is that they're aspiring to do.
So I'm going to interrupt you and ask about the term rebranding.
Rebranding. That is a mental and internal process that requires you, if you're a teacher or whatever you are, if you're a nurse, if you're an administrative assistant, you've decided you want to do something different, you have to drop the I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm an administrative assistant, and instead embrace I'm becoming, and fill in the blank, corporate trainer, curriculum designer, graphic designer, website developer, whatever it is that they've decided they want to move towards. Some have decided they want to become a coach or a blogger or a podcast host. So they start to reframe for themselves, and they have to do it for themselves first, because then they have to convey to the people that they're meeting along the way, whether they're interviewers or people at a networking event or people that are doing informational interviews to learn more about what a job entails. They have to be able to internalize the new brand that they're adopting for themselves so that they can expertly communicate what it is that they're looking for. And so rebranding, in my process, people need to learn how to write for the applicant tracking system and how to rebrand themselves before they ever tackle their resume. Because the misconception that I think a lot of new rookie job seekers have is, I've decided I want a new job, so I need to write a resume. For me, that makes this much sense as, I'm going on vacation, so let me book my airfare and my hotel room before deciding where they want to go on vacation. So you have to do the pre-work first, or the resume is going to be trash and you'll have to redo it anyway. The resume has to be targeted to the job that you're applying for. So you have to decide what kind of job you want, start the rebranding process, learn what the applicant tracking system requires, and then write a resume that is more than likely going to make its way through the applicant tracking system and onto the desk of a potential hiring manager.
Wonderful. So back to this example, because I sidetracked you with rebranding.
So this example would be that they were teachers for more than 20 years. And they had already been through the guilt process. They had set the guilt aside. In fact, they collectively told me, I'd rather wait tables than go back to the classroom. They were just done. They were both in situations where they were unhappy and felt like they were not being treated professionally. So they had already moved on from their classroom, but they had not yet landed what they were looking for. With my process, rebranding, learning how to do the resume, learning how to write a compelling cover letter that explains the reason for this career shift or pivot, because that's often the big question that a hiring manager will have. Well, this is great, you're a teacher, but why are you applying for this job? So you have to spell it out for them. And you can't make the mistake of thinking that they will connect the dots themselves. They won't. They won't take the time to do that. So you have to draw the picture for them of why you would be a great candidate for this job, with the combination of the resume that highlights the transferable skills that you have that are pertinent to the job, and a compelling cover letter that explains why you would be the perfect fit and why you're looking to make this particular change in your life now. Along with those two tools, you need a stellar LinkedIn profile, and ultimately you're going to need terrific interview skills. Because a lot of times teachers will tend to get as far as the interview and then blow the interview because they haven't properly prepared, they haven't thought about how they're going to start the interview, and they wind up accidentally shooting themselves in the foot.
When you talk, I'm sorry to interrupt again. If you talk about the LinkedIn profile, are they translating the work in the classroom in ways that the audience gets, that they can do, let's say, training or learning management?
Yes, if they're taking my advice, they are. And so, yes. And in the example that I'm offering, they went through the process. They attended all of the group coaching calls. They took advantage of the email support that I offer. They really dove into the modules and followed the directions to the T. And in both cases, they wound up with different companies, but corporate training jobs. And in one case, they were hired specifically because they had been a teacher. The company was looking for someone who could simply present their material. So in that particular job, they don't have to write any of the content themselves. They simply learn the content, learn the jargon, and present the information to the audience that the company provides for them. The other example is that they found a position, and this was an interesting example, and they wouldn't mind me using it. They had been looking for a little while longer than the other example, and they decided to put it out on Facebook that they were in a serious job search, and if anybody knew of anything, to let them know. Lo and behold, an old friend from elementary school who had gone to school with this person all the way through high school, knew that they were hardworking, had a great work ethic, were talented. And so he contacted my client, offered to help with the resume, offered introductions at his company, and boom, 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 now she's a trainer for that company. Oh,
I'm hearing a theme so far about training being an area that teachers can transition to pretty easily. Are there other fields that they tend to think of when they go exploring other options?
The general theme that a lot of my clients, and it's partly because they've spent a lot of money. In many cases, my clients have at least one master's degree, in some cases, multiple master's degrees, all of them directed toward education. And because of that, they tend to want to stay within the realm of education, but in a different capacity. So many of them might be looking for jobs with companies that offer training for young teachers, companies that are doing textbook design and content, others who are looking for curriculum and instruction professionals. So that's sort of a theme. Now, I have also had people who found positions as event coordinators and education coordinators for nonprofits and for museums and that kind of thing. I had one client who found a position as the education coordinator for her church, and she is over the moon. In fact, just not very long ago, after being on the job for over a year, she emailed me to tell me how much she loves her new job and how she feels validated and appreciated every day in a way that she never felt when she was in the classroom, which is really sad. A lot of teachers might actually be able to compensate for some of the difficulties of the teaching position if they felt like anybody really appreciated their efforts. But we've gotten into a situation now where the expectation is, of course, you'll give 120%. You won't ask any questions. You'll just do what you're told. And if you don't feel appreciated, too bad, so sad. And it's because of that attitude on the part of administrators and some parents, many policymakers, and lots of politicians, that teachers are just fed up. And then there's this whole other movement that I'm sure you've heard about, where people en masse are quitting their job. The pandemic has awakened people to the fact that their job is not necessarily who they are. And the pandemic has made them re-examine who are they, and professionally, what is it that they want to do? And so people are quitting their jobs in larger numbers than ever and exploring other possibilities. And corporations, in the meantime, are begging for workers and can't find enough workers to fill all the openings.
Absolutely true. Kitty, we're having a great time here, and time is always finite. What haven't we covered yet that we really should?
Well, I think we've covered pretty much the gamut that teachers tend to run, from the guilt and the question of what could I even do if I were to leave, to that there are other options. It's just a matter of making a decision. And often that's the sticky wicket. They're not ready to make a decision that it's time. And I just heard it last night on a group coaching call. Some days are pretty good and they begin to think, well, maybe this is not so bad. And then they have a horrible day. A kid cusses them out or throws a chair at them. And they decide, nope, this isn't what I signed up for and I'm out of here. So there's that sort of roller coaster that teachers are often on. And I guess the other thing that we haven't talked about is that cycle that keeps teachers stuck sometimes for years. Because every year we start out fresh on beginning of school, fresh slate for everybody. Everybody's excited and enthusiastic. And by this time in October, A lot of the luster has worn off. People are getting tired. They're starting to look forward to the Thanksgiving break, even though we haven't even gotten to Halloween yet. And then by the new year, we're back up to sort of a high again, hopeful and eager for a new start, a brand new year. And then by March, everybody's sort of back down in the slump and hanging on for the summer break. During the summer, teachers who think that they might be job hunting, I'm going to make this my last year of teaching, so I'm going to wait until this summer and start job hunting. That hardly ever happens because they're on vacation, they're with their families. The pain of the previous year begins to fade away, and the anticipation of a new year starts to crop up around the end of July. And all of a sudden, they're back into the same cycle. And so I guess I would like to point that out for any teacher who may be listening, or anybody who has a teacher in their family, to be aware that this is sort of a cyclical thing that teachers tend to go through, and to be sensitive to it.
And I somehow suspect when it's time, they've actually made the move and they've started the new job. September, the first year, might be a funny time of year for
it. It is a funny time. I remember my own, as president of the BEA, when school got ready to start, and I realized that I was not having to go to any faculty meetings, and I was going to miss the first day of school since I was in first grade. So I called my principal and asked her if I could volunteer to help get the little ones to the classrooms from the bus to the, because kindergartners don't know where they're going, and they get off the bus, and sometimes they're excited and sometimes they're crying. And so my job as the librarian was always to walk them to their classroom. So I volunteered to do that. And then I stuck around to help my replacement to get used to the routine. But after that one time, Jeff, I never felt the need to go back. I got it out of my system. I think people do feel that sort of nostalgia, but if they've made the right move, it'll be a faint, oh, this is the first day of school, and now I've got a brand new career going.
Wonderful. Kitty, this has been terrific. How can people find about you, your course, the podcast, the books, everything?
They can go to my website, which is teachersintransition.com. I do have a Facebook group. It's just getting started, but it's the Teachers in Transition community. It's a free group. I have a paid group for my clients who are taking part in the course. The course that I offer is called Jumpstart Your Job Search. And if anybody's interested in learning about that, they can simply email me at kittyboitnot@gmail.com.
And I'll have that email address in the show notes, folks. Kitty, thank you. This has been terrific.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. And folks, we'll be back soon with more. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. Hope you enjoyed the interview today. If you're watching on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. It does help other people discover the show. Or share it with the teachers in your life. It does make a difference. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching, if you're interested in checking me out or the information I provide, at my website, thebiggamehunter.us, there are thousands of posts that you can watch, listen to, or read that will help you. And my courses are also available through the website. Again, thebiggamehunter.us. And if this isn't the right time, put that address in your phone so you can come back to me at a later time. Lastly, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/thebiggamehunter. Mention that you saw the interview with Kitty. I like knowing I've been helping some folks. And once we're connected, trust me, your network is going to be a lot larger. Hope you have a terrific day. And most importantly, be great. Take care.